Hello and good morning. You're watching Daybreak live on A News, and I'm here to take you through the day's top stories. So let's take a look at the headlines. European leaders criticize Israel's expanded military operations in southern Lebanon. UN chief warns of a nuclear risk after a reported drone strike on Zaporizhzhia power plant. And Colombia's presidential race heads to a runoff after a first round triggers disputes. First this morning, international pressure is mounting on Israel after its latest military advance in southern Lebanon drew criticism from key European allies. As Israeli troops expand operations beyond previous front lines, Lebanon is warning of a growing humanitarian crisis and the risk of further regional escalation.
European leaders are voicing concern over Israel's latest military escalation in southern Lebanon, following the capture of new strategic positions and an expansion of ground operations against Hezbollah. The UK, France and Germany have criticised the move, while France has requested a United Nations Security Council meeting to discuss the situation. Lebanon's Prime Minister Nawaf Salam accused Israel of carrying out a scorched earth policy and imposing collective punishment on civilians in the south. The Israeli military has issued new evacuation warnings covering a large area south of the Zerani River. The IDF says it is targeting Hezbollah infrastructure in Tyre and other locations, and warned that anyone near Hezbollah positions could be at risk. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said troops have crossed beyond the Litani River and secured key positions.
I instructed the IDF to expand the maneuver in Lebanon. Our forces crossed the Litani River. They seized controlled areas. They occupied the Beaufort Ridge. And now my instruction is to deepen and expand our grip on the places that were under Hezbollah's control.
Defense Minister Israel Katz said Israeli forces will remain at the site as part of what Israel calls a security zone in southern Lebanon. The capture of Beaufort marks the first time Israeli forces have held the site since their withdrawal from southern Lebanon in 2000. Israel says the operation is aimed at protecting communities in northern Israel from future attacks. Hezbollah has not yet commented on the latest advances. Meanwhile, Lebanon's health ministry says at least 3,371 people have been killed and more than 10,000 injured since March 2nd as the conflict continues to intensify.
Now let's take a look at the story shaping the day across the globe. And we head first to Deutsche Welle website this morning and what's been going on overnight, because Colombia is set for a runoff vote after tight presidential polls. Now polling started on Sunday, and early projections following the tight presidential vote indicate outsider Abelardo de la Espriella, who is this man on the left, your left I believe, was slightly ahead over rival, who is this guy here, Ivan Cepeda. Now, on Sunday evening, the country's electoral officials said that de la Espriella had 43.7% of the votes and Cepeda had 41%, with nearly all of the votes counted. Now, because of that, neither of them seems to be on track to attain the 50% plus votes required to secure the presidential post, making it likely for the outcome to be decided at the runoff round, which is going to be the next round, which is scheduled to be on the 21st of June. So we'll definitely keep you updated. But just to add that the outgoing president, who is Gustavo Petro, has said that he did not expect the tally right now, which puts his favorite, which is Cepeda, who he's actually is backing in this, in second place. Now, Petro has pledged to wait for the final results, which will be reviewed by judges in relation to how tight the vote count is. Now, what do these candidates stand for? Now, the forerunner, which is Abelardo de la Espriella, who is the right-wing candidate, has often portrayed himself as tough on crime, who also spoke in support of US President Donald Trump as well. Now, Ivan Cepeda, a 63-year-old left-leaning senator, has promised to expand social reforms, and the incumbent president Gustavo Petro has thrown his support behind him in relation to that. Now, the candidates have been campaigning on promises to tackle armed drug running guerrilla guerrilla groups, reduce inequality and poverty, and improve the country's healthcare system. But we will keep you up to date, because now that we know that it will definitely be going to a runoff later on this month. Okay, now let's turn to our next story this morning, and that's on the Guardian website, and that's in relation to our top story, where European leaders condemn Israel's deepening incursion into Lebanon. Now, we know that just on Sunday that Israel has been able to capture a historic medieval castle in southern Lebanon, and European leaders have condemned this particular incursion after its military captured the site. Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to push even deeper into the country. France's President Emmanuel Macron has spoken out about it. He has called for an end to the fighting, saying that nothing justifies the major escalation underway in South Lebanon. The country's foreign minister in France has also requested a meeting of the UN Security Council for Monday, and foreign ministers of the UK, Germany also joined in condemning Israel in relation to this new operation. Now, Israel says that it's doing this to target Hezbollah, which is a strong political presence in southern Lebanon. And just as a reminder that the current conflict between the two began in March after Hezbollah fired rockets towards Israel in retaliation for the US-Israeli killing of Iran's supreme leader back in late February, early March. Now, Netanyahu has called on Sunday's capture of the Beaufort Castle a dramatic shift in the campaign against Hezbollah. And as we just see coming up right now, there is a map. Now, the castle offers views across Lebanon, so it just provides you with a bit more detail here. And into northern Israel, it was built as a crusader castle around the 12th century and later occupied by the Saldine's Jerusalem army, the Ottomans, the French, and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. So it's quite a key landmark that Israel has been able to take in regards to their fight against Hezbollah. Okay, now let's move over to our next story, which we go to Le Monde for, and it regards to PSG. It says dozens arrested in Paris, clashes on PSG victory night. Now, what's happened? French police have detained at least 780 people involved in violent clashes in Paris and other French cities that erupted on Saturday night after Paris Saint-Germain defeated Arsenal to win the Champions League. Now, at a news press conference on Sunday, it was said that the situation had been largely brought under control. Police also intervened 5 times overnight to prevent people from blocking traffic on the main ring road as well. And also there were incidences in 15 other cities within France as well. And reports that 1 or 2 shops were vandalized in these particular clashes. Now, what in relation these clashes are due to is more being looked into, as we don't have that information right now, but we know that this is a tag-along to PSG's win for the Champions League over the weekend on Saturday, which was in Budapest, and then they came to Paris, to France, to celebrate their win, and then that's when a number of protests, well, not protests, but outbursts began, which involved a number of vandalized shops being vandalized and a number of arrests as well. Now, just adding to this, we also go to BBC because, just to add that, Arsenal celebrated their Premier League win on Sunday. Here, so Arsenal fans turned streets red for victory parade, painting the streets red in London, and it's the club's first Premier League title in 22 years, and it comes off the back of their loss of the Champions League against PSG in Budapest. So they also held a parade on the Sunday. They were joined by the women's team, who lifted the first ever FIFA Women's Champions Cup over the season as well. I think we did have some video that can show some of the fans lighting up the streets and saying how proud they are of being a Arsenal supporter. As you can see here, just rows and rows, and you see their tour buses as well going through different parts of North London here, as many of the fans as well as the footballers came out to express their happy time of 22 years waiting for this moment. And as you can see, nothing but red, nothing but smiles, loads of red shirts, red jerseys, all supporting Arsenal and their win, as you can see right here. Okay, now let's go to our next headline this morning, and that's on the CBS News website in relation to what's happening with Iran and the US. So Trump recently edited possible US-Iran agreement, including on the enriched uranium and Strait of Hormuz, sources say. Now, President Donald Trump has requested that edits be made to the US-Iran deal to bring an end to the fighting that began earlier this year, and that's what's currently being reported. Now, the changes are related to the Strait of Hormuz and the removal of highly enriched uranium. Now, Iran's chief negotiator said on Sunday that Tehran would not agree to any deal unless Iran's rights were fully secured. The president and senior aides met on Friday to make a final determination about a framework for extending the ceasefire with Iran, but the meeting concluded without any clarity on the next steps. Sunday's reports of further edits are the latest in the developments in negotiations between the US and Iran. And US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said that should a deal with Iran not meet the president's expectations, strikes could again resume. Now, just adding on to that, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that until a clear conclusion is reached, everything that is being said now is speculation. And that's according to state media. We have that of him saying that. So we will definitely keep you up to date with what happens between the US and Iran and if they're able to secure a deal. I'll also be reflecting on this as well as what's going on with Lebanon and Israel later on in the program with a political analyst to further analyze exactly what is going on and whether or not a peace deal can be met between the US and Iran, as well as stopping the fighting within Lebanon as well with Hezbollah and Israel. Now, that's your morning press roundup. Let's now take a break. When I return, I'll discuss the rest of the global stories this morning. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak. Now let's have a look at the global stories this morning. And we head first over to what's going on with the International Atomic Energy Agency, who has warned that attacks on nuclear facilities are unacceptable and must stop, citing the very real risk of nuclear accident. Director General Rafael Grossi made the appeal following a reported drone strike on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, describing it as a serious incident that put key nuclear safety principles at risk. IAEA experts inspecting the site found damage consistent with a drone impact on a turbine building. However, the agency said there was no immediate radiological danger. On the 1st of June, deadline is looming for US President Donald Trump to respond to BBC's motion to dismiss his multi-billion-dollar lawsuit. The broadcaster has rejected Trump's demands for compensation over edits made to his speech in a documentary. Here's more.
US President Donald Trump faces a June 1st deadline to respond to the BBC's motion to dismiss his $10 billion lawsuit over edits made to a speech featured in a documentary. The lawsuit, filed in Florida, accuses the BBC of intentionally and deceptively altering a speech Trump delivered on January 6, 2021, ahead of the US Capitol riots. Trump alleges that the broadcaster spliced together parts of his speech to make it appear that he had directed supporters to storm the Capitol later that day.
In a little while, you'll be seeing I'm suing the BBC for putting words in my mouth, literally. They put words in my mouth. They had me saying things that I never said coming out. I guess they used AI or something.
The BBC's lawyers have argued that the Panorama documentary, called Trump: A Second Chance, was not published in the United States and therefore falls outside the court's jurisdiction. The documentary's fallout, including allegations of bias, led to the resignations of the BBC's top executive and its head of news in November last year.
It seems, in the context of the resignation of the Director General and the head of news at the BBC, that it is not disputed that there was some editing carried out whereby either two different parts of one speech or two speeches were put together in a way which did not reflect exactly the speech that President Trump had actually made. However, I guess a question might be whether that was simply a bit of editing which didn't affect the sense of what he had said, or whether it was a distortion.
The BBC has previously apologised for the way the speech was edited, but maintains there are no grounds for a defamation claim and has rejected Trump's demands for compensation. The broadcaster has also argued that Trump's re-election undermines any claim of reputational damage. Under the current schedule, the BBC will have until June 15th to respond after Trump files his reply.
Now, Kuwait says its air defences have intercepted missile and drone attacks on its airspace. The military says explosions heard by residents were linked to interception operations. The military urged the public to remain calm and follow safety instructions. It added that Kuwait's armed forces remain fully prepared to protect national airspace. Meanwhile, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said early Monday that it struck a US airbase allegedly used to launch an attack on a telecommunications tower on the Syriac island. US President Donald Trump is seeking changes to a proposed Iran deal aimed at extending a ceasefire and reviving nuclear negotiations, according to US media reports. The reported revisions focus on the Strait of Hormuz and the handling of Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium. Trump and senior advisors met on Friday to review the framework, but no final decision was reached. The latest proposal reportedly includes a 60-day halt in violence, the reopening of the strait, and a pathway to the renewed talks on Iran's nuclear program. Meanwhile, Iran's chief negotiator Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf says Tehran will not accept any agreement unless its rights are fully guaranteed. Oil prices rose more than 2% in early trading on Monday after Israel moved troops deeper into Lebanon. US crude climbed to nearly $90 a barrel and Brent crude rose above $93. The military move came despite a ceasefire that has been in place for more than 6 weeks between Israel and Lebanon. Murals, decorations and promotional displays are appearing across the Mexican city of Guadalajara as preparations continue for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. The streets are being transformed with vibrant artwork, large-scale installations and themed displays ahead of the global football event. Guadalajara is one of 3 Mexican host cities alongside Mexico City and Monterrey. The tournament will be jointly hosted by the Spanish-speaking country, the US and Canada. Now, Bosnia and Herzegovina marked White Ribbon Day on Sunday in honor of more than 3,000 civilians killed in the western town of Prijedor. On the 31st of May 1992, the Serbian administration ordered the non-Serbian population to wear white armbands when leaving their homes. The order was followed by extermination, killings and persecution. Chairman and Bosniak member of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina issued a written statement noting that international courts have recognized the events as war crimes. Paris Saint-Germain's Champions League winners have received a hero's welcome in the French capital, with President Emmanuel Macron hosting the team at the Élysée Palace following their historic European triumph. The players arrived with the Champions League trophy after defeating Arsenal in Budapest, where they were congratulated by Macron and praised for delivering one of the biggest achievements in French club football. The French president told the squad they had thrilled the nation and thanked them for bringing another major European title to France. Macron also condemned the violence and disorder reported during some of the celebrations, saying authorities would take a firm approach towards those responsible.
Paris a gagné 2 étoiles. Merci. Mais je dois dire que vous nous avez fait vraiment vibrer jusqu'à la dernière
I have to say that you thrilled us up to the last second. When last year was a massive victory, this time you went to get it, and we were thrilled along with you, beyond the 120-minute play time, up to the last second in these penalty shootouts. What a team! Yesterday, thanks to PSG, France was able to do in 2 years what had never been done in our history in 70 years of football, meaning 2 titles. And so we thank you for that. Unfortunately, we saw, and I don't want us to get used to this, and no one wants us to get used to this, unacceptable scenes of violence in Paris and in other cities. That's not football, that's not sports, that's not what we love. We will be uncompromising towards those who were caught. We no longer want to see this. Finished, we're fed up, it's done. Outside.
Now, the battle for Colombia's presidency is intensifying after preliminary results put a right-wing outsider, Abelardo de la Espriella, ahead, prompting President Gustavo Petro to challenge the vote and demand judicial scrutiny. Here's more.
Right-wing outsider Abelardo de la Espriella has emerged as the front-runner in Colombia's presidential election and is set to face left-wing Senator Ivan Cepeda in a second-round vote later this month. De la Espriella celebrated the result with supporters in Barranquilla, where he launched a fierce attack on both President Gustavo Petro and his political ally Ivan Cepeda.
You, Mr. Gustavo Petro, and you, Mr. Ivan Cepeda, are a couple of criminals whom we will send into retirement forever. Petro is a criminal and has said he doesn't recognize the results, which have been decisive. A call to the security forces, to the army of the homeland, to activate the constitutional mechanism in the event that this criminal, drug-addicted and miserable man tries to ignore the will of the Colombian people.
The result, however, has quickly become the subject of controversy. President Petro says he does not accept the preliminary count, arguing that only the final results certified by judicial scrutiny commissions should be considered valid. In a post on social media, Petro questioned discrepancies in the electoral roll and raised concerns about changes made to the counting system. Cepeda has also urged caution, saying his campaign will wait for the official review process before recognizing the outcome.
The President of the Republic has just spoken clearly about one of those situations. There is a discrepancy that we want to verify regarding the electoral roll, and that is not just any discrepancy. We are talking about 885,000 people, or IED numbers.
Despite the dispute, preliminary results placed De la Espriella in first place with more than 43% of the vote, ahead of Cepeda on just under 41%. The two candidates are now expected to face off in a highly polarized runoff campaign, with security, governance and the future direction of the country likely to dominate the contest.
The ASEAN Secretary-General Kao Kim Horn says he is optimistic that ASEAN and China can conclude negotiations on a long-awaited South China Sea Code of Conduct this year. Negotiations on the conduct began in 2017, building on the 2002 Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. Speaking at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, Kao said both sides remain committed to finalizing the agreement, describing it as being in the interests of both ASEAN and China.
This year, what is important also I want to highlight is that this is the 5th anniversary of ASEAN-China Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. And we have to do a lot of activities. We have been negotiating for the COC since 2017. And the goal, of course, to conclude the CEC negotiations within this year. Our member states on the ASEAN side in China have been working very hard together to conclude the COC. And I believe that we have a lot of confidence. I have a lot of optimism that we will be able to conclude this. It's for the interest of ASEAN and China to have the COC concluded. I think there's a commitment and there's interest there.
Staying on China, from boxing robots to AI-powered manufacturing, China's World Intelligence Expo has been showcasing that technology is expected to shape the next phase of innovation and economic growth. Here's more.
Thousands of visitors have gathered in the northern Chinese city of Tianjin as the World Intelligence Expo opened its doors to the public for the final days of the event. The exhibition brought together hundreds of companies and researchers, highlighting advances in artificial intelligence, robotics, smart manufacturing, and next-generation transport. Among the biggest attractions were interactive robots capable of performing everyday tasks, from preparing coffee and cooking breakfast to playing board games and even sparring in boxing demonstrations. The expo also featured innovations in autonomous mobility, intelligent vehicles, commercial space technology, and the rapidly growing low-altitude economy. More than 700 companies participated in the exhibition, which covered over 130,000 square metres of exhibition space. The event attracted more than 180,000 visitors and resulted in dozens of new investment and cooperation agreements. The expo comes as China continues to invest heavily in artificial intelligence and advanced technologies, viewing them as key drivers of future economic growth and competitiveness.
Staying on technology, as cyber threats become more common and digital systems increasingly interconnected, researchers and tech companies are racing to secure the future of online communication. And in South Africa, scientists and cybersecurity firms are exploring both experimental and real-time solutions aimed at protecting sensitive data.
Students move between lectures at the University of the Witwatersrand, one of several institutions positioning South Africa within a growing global race to secure the future of the internet. Inside the physics department, lasers fire across a darkened laboratory where researchers are experimenting with a new way of transmitting data using the principles of quantum physics. Professor Andrew Forbes is among those leading the work, developing communication systems that could make certain types of cyber interception fundamentally detectable.
When I generate these two quantum particles and they're going in different directions, these two different paths, if someone were to intercept this one and do something to it, I would see it on my other particle. So when I see, somebody is intercepting, I immediately stop the connection. In the quantum world, the eavesdropper always changes what they're trying to intercept. So they can break the connection, but they can never get the information.
Forbes and his team are also working to increase the capacity of current networks. Today's fibre systems carry information through a single pattern of light. Their approach would allow thousands of patterns to travel simultaneously, significantly increasing bandwidth while introducing new forms of secure transmission.
You can think of every pattern as being almost like a tube carrying the present-day internet speed. If we have 100 tubes like that, we have 100 times the bandwidth. So that's where the speed comes in. And what we want to do is we want to take that speed layer and put it on top of the present internet, put it on top of the present Starlink systems. We're not going to replace them, we're going to enhance them with this new technology. So it is disruptive, but not in the sense that you rip everything out. It's disruptive in the sense that you do things differently by improving present-day systems.
The research comes as cyber threats intensify globally, particularly in financial systems, where vast volumes of data and transactions are processed in real time.
Right now we are on the second quantum revolution, and South Africa is actually on the forefront of this. I think we often see ourselves as always sort of having to catch up to what the rest of the world is doing, but I don't think that's the case right now. I actually think we're in front with the pack currently. I think oftentimes you see on the news, we're doing world-class research, and I think now not only have we caught up, but we're actually there with the leaders as well.
At startup Orca Fraud, engineers and analysts monitor payment systems designed to detect suspicious activity as transactions occur. Unlike the experimental work in Johannesburg, Orca operates firmly within existing infrastructure.
The cyber fraud problem is worse than ever before. We're now seeing fraud move faster than ever across borders on instant payment methods that are moving instantly. We're seeing with the rise of AI, fraud is mutating, so the fraudsters have some of the best tools in the world to really transform and attack us in more surface areas than ever before.
The company's systems assess transactions in fractions of a second, cross-referencing multiple signals to determine whether activity is legitimate or potentially fraudulent.
When a fraudulent transaction hits the system, we get the payment initiation as it happens, and then within 200 milliseconds we're able to respond with the likelihood that this transaction is fraudulent. So in order to detect a fraudulent transaction, we look at a whole combination of signals that we're able to cross-reference across each other. And the way that we set that up is through heuristics, machine learning, the ability to detect anomalies in behavior, both on the user basis and on a broader customer basis.
As digital payments accelerate and expand across borders, the speed and complexity of cyber fraud is increasing, placing pressure on institutions to react almost instantaneously. While commercial deployment remains years away, the research reflects a broader shift in how governments, scientists and industry are thinking about cybersecurity, from responding to threats to redesigning the systems they target.
Now to sport, and the 109th Giro d'Italia concluded on Sunday, with riders taking part in the race's final stage across Italy after 3 weeks of competition. Denmark's Jonas Vingegaard won the title to clinch his 4th Grand Tour title, having also won the Tour de France twice before. Vingegaard also won the pink jersey on Saturday and outdid other cyclists during the climb to the Pian Cavallo, extending his overall lead to more than 5 minutes. Italian Jonathan Milan went on to win Sunday's final stage in Rome.
Signore e signori, la vostra attenzione. Borsa più dura del mondo. Il trofeo senza fine viene consegnato in questo istante al dominatore assoluto dell'edizione 2020.
A rare blue moon rose above the Temple of Poseidon in Cape, a cultural landmark in Greece on Sunday. The moonlight illuminated the historic temple near Athens, creating a striking view above the Aegean Sea. The phenomenon refers to the second full moon within the same calendar month, a relatively uncommon event that also marks the end of spring. Despite the name, the moon is not actually blue. According to NASA, this is one of the smallest moons of the year, known as micromoon. A lovely scene there. Now to a quick break. When I return, we'll look at the regional stories, and I'll be joined by a studio guest to go through some of the key headlines. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, and thank you for joining me this morning. Now let's return to the regional stories making headlines this morning. Now, Azerbaijan will mark World Environment Day on the 5th of June with a series of nationwide environmental events organised by the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources in partnership with the United Nations Environment Programme. The day will bring together government institutions, businesses, non-governmental organisations, educational institutions and members of the public. Activities planned include tree planting campaigns, clean-up drives, exhibitions, outdoor events and climate awareness initiatives. Now we come on the heels of the 13th edition of the World Urban Forum, the largest gathering in the history of the forum. And now, from the 1st to the 3rd of June, Azerbaijan will host Baku Energy Week, bringing together major stakeholders from across the international energy sector. The event will comprise the 31st International Caspian Oil and Gas Exhibition, the 14th Caspian International Clean Energy exhibition and the 31st Baku Energy Forum. The week also coincides with the World Environment Day on the 5th of June, observed annually since 1973 and dedicated to raising awareness of environmental protection and sustainable development. Joining me now in the studio is Parvan Valieva, member of the Milli Majlis Azerbaijan. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you for having me.
My first question in relation to all of that, and just because there's so much things happening in Baku recently, as I mentioned, there was WUF 2 weeks ago, now we're focusing on Energy Week. Where do you see the strongest links between urban sustainability, energy security and environmental protection?
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, Azerbaijan will host one of the UN global event. It will be organized together with UNEP, UN Environment Program, and with Azerbaijan government. This is a commemoration day, but it is not only a ceremonial event, but a practical platform to discuss some environmental solutions and challenges. So Azerbaijan has a big organizational capacity to host such events, and hosting such events shows firstly the growing global visibility of Azerbaijan. We will be once again a global platform for cooperation, for discussions on climate change, because we have the strong legacy of climate change since we hosted COP29 in 2024 in Baku, and we made big contributions to climate action, global climate action, and also there is a big practical knowledge on climate diplomacy. So again, we will make a big awareness on climate change, on global warming, on environmental things in Baku, in Azerbaijan. So as you said, we concluded the last week the biggest WWOOF ever in the WWOOF's history, and it concluded with Baku Call to Action, which will be the next 10 years, decades of the global urban agenda for UN member states. We were very successful here, and there is a very interlink between COP29, World Environment Day, and also WWOOF 13. For example, COP29 brought global climate discussions to Baku. WWOOF 13 linked climate change to sustainable urban development and quality of life. And again, World Environment Day will bring aims to bring these tendencies, these phenomena, again environmental, thanks to the discussions of the public. It mainly focuses on building awareness, the public awareness, and to call them to protect our planet together.
Okay, well, that's really interesting, and there's so much going on in what you just kind of displayed and been able to communicate. Now, if we build on the legacy of COP29 and now the World Urban Forum that we just spoke of, that took place 2 weeks ago, how transformative do you believe the current moment is for Azerbaijan's environmental and sustainability agenda?
Yeah, it's very interlinked. There is a strong synergy between these agendas, environmental sustainability agenda, and Azerbaijan is a global platform for global sustainability dialogue. There are very important decisions made in this venue in Baku. So Azerbaijan has also its own commitments to, for example, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We updated our NDCs during COP30 in Brazil. Now we will cut the greenhouse gas emissions 30% by 2030, and we will put forward our NDCs by 15 years that we will cut the emissions 40% by 2035. For NDCs, it was by 2050. So it is 15 years forward for Azerbaijan. This also shows that Azerbaijan has good practices to contribute to climate action. We committed also have net zero carbon emission areas in Nakhchivan, in Karabakh and Eastern Zengezur region, which are post-conflict areas of Azerbaijan. So it will be not only the first net zero carbon emission areas of Azerbaijan, but also of the world. We are doing different things to fight against climate change in our country. For example, we also contribute to global action. We joined and signed global methane pledge to reduce methane emissions in our country in February 2024, before the COP29. So we aim to reduce 30% methane by 2030 with other member states. Also, we are doing different things to promote public transportation to reduce carbon emissions. Some countries also apply carbon tax to private sector in order to regulate carbon emissions. We are also doing something because climate change affects our country as well. We see heavy rainfalls recently, floods in the regions, of course some heat waves during summer season, pressing water resource challenge we have, also decline of water levels of Caspian Sea.
Yeah, definitely. And by you mentioned quite a number of dates and goals in relation to that, but by 2032, Azerbaijan actually expects to generate between 6 to 8 gigawatts of power from renewable sources. How realistic is that particular energy goal, and could that gradually balance Azerbaijan's traditional oil and gas profile and help lay the foundations for genuinely sustainable energy future?
Azerbaijan believes that we should take real commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to gradually transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. So that's why we are investing continuously to renewables, to have some green energy, clean energy projects. We get some revenue from oil and gas sector, and we reinvest it to renewables. So this is our country's strategy. This is also part of the Azerbaijan 2030 social and economic development strategy. And we are, I can say, championing in green energy. We have some important commitments, also important projects with Aqua Power, with Masdar in Karabakh and Eastern Gezur, Nakhchivan, also in Garadagh, in some cities of our country, with solar panels, wind powers, because Azerbaijan has diversified renewable energy sources, wind, hydrogen, solar power. That's why we use it. We use them with a good partnership projects. So I think it is feasible, because I think it was 2 months ago that we produced energy from 29% of all produced electricity, we get it from renewables. So our commitment is 30% by 2030. So now we already achieved this goal. That's why it is very feasible.
Okay, well, this year's Energy Week will also showcase the integration of AI, artificial intelligence, into drilling operations and smart field development. How transformative do you think AI and digital tech is to be for the energy sector over the next decade?
Yeah, technology is very important for drilling, as you said, also for green energy projects, AI-based solutions. AI is diffusing our lives day by day, very closer. So that's why it is very important for energy sector as well. Azerbaijan is now hosting Energy Week because we are doing many things. As I said, in energy, we are championing in fossil fuel, also traditional energy, as well as in renewables. So that's why cooperation, this is a stage for cooperation with other countries, other international organizations. Azerbaijan is guiding this cooperation. Also, we are hosting Clean Energy Center of ECO. It is the organization of international development, economic development, that is combined 5 countries. So we are hosting these organizations, Clean Energy Center in Baku. That's why it means that Azerbaijan now forming the new energy agenda of the global
I see. And just on that, just because obviously Energy Week is beginning today and it will go on throughout a number of days this week, what are the challenges do you think that Azerbaijan is facing? Just because we know that right now the Strait of Hormuz is shut and that's causing a major form of energy closure for other countries across the world, but not necessarily here. How can other countries maybe learn from what Azerbaijan is doing, and if there are any challenges to that?
There are a lot of things that other countries can learn from Azerbaijan. We are also sharing our experiences with other countries. So just we focus on, we understand that there are geopolitical tensions, market volatility in energy market, and it means that it makes energy producers and consumers more vulnerable in these days. We understand what's happening to Hormuz, but we have enough potential in energy, in, as I said, traditional energy, as well as in renewable energy. We have good energy corridors. We have committed to have some projects in green energy corridors to invest here and also export this energy through Caspian corridor to Europe, through Turkey and Georgia. We have some important green energy corridor projects. Also, we have fiber optic internet as well as clean energy projects with our Central Asian brothers, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. We are doing this. We also, it's like Azerbaijan is like a locomotive for helping to Central Asia countries to export their energy potential, electricity to Europe. Azerbaijan is an energy hub now, is a transit for energy. That's why other countries can learn Azerbaijan strategies in these spheres as well. Okay, well, it's going to be a very interesting week, no doubt. But thank you so much for coming on to the programme and for sharing those insights for us here. So Energy Week is around on the 1st to the 3rd of June. Thank you for inviting me. No problem. Miss Valieva, thank you. Now we move over to a new story, and the Nerman Fairy chimneys are attracting growing numbers of visitors in northeastern Turkey. Tourists from across the country are flocking to the unique red rock formations, which date back approximately 300 million years. Let's take a look at this.
The Nerman Fairy chimneys, also known as the Land of Red Fairies in northeastern Turkey, welcomed large numbers of visitors. Tourist traffic surged on Saturday as growing numbers of people travelled to the site to explore the unique rock formations, which date back approximately 300 million years. Visitors from different cities across Turkey filled the area, taking photographs among the striking red valleys. Some also enjoyed horseback riding through the scenic landscape, where red and green tones blend together. Located in Erzurum province, this natural wonder was shaped over millions of years by water and wind erosion and continues to captivate visitors throughout the year. The distinctive red colour of the formations comes from the oxidation of iron elements found in the sedimentary rocks. The canyon-like landscape is often compared to the Grand Canyon, which was carved by the Colorado River in the United States. Beyond its visual appeal, the Land of Red Fairies is also becoming a centre for cultural activities aimed at promoting nature tourism. In 2012, the Nerman Fairy chimneys were added to UNESCO's Temporary World Cultural Heritage List.
Now time for a break. When I return, I have a full update on the latest headlines, plus a look at what's making the front pages this morning. Don't go anywhere. Hello, you're watching Daybreak live on A News, and I'm your host, Nadia Jani. I'm here to take you through the day's top stories. So let's take a look at the headlines. European leaders are criticising Israel's expanded military operations in southern Lebanon as concerns grow over regional escalation. UN chief is warning of the risk of a nuclear accident after a reported drone strike in Zaporizhzhia power plant. And Colombia's presidential race is heading to a runoff after a contentious first round which has triggered disputes over vote count. Now let's take a look at the story shaping the day across the globe, and we head first to Deutsche Welle's website, and leading with this story with what's happening in Colombia's presidential elections, because Colombia is set for a runoff vote after tight presidential poll. So what's been going on? Early projections follow the tight presidential vote that indicate that outsider Abelardo de la Espriella was slightly ahead over his rival Ivan Cepeda. Now this is Espriella on my left here, on your left, and then on the right is Ivan Cepeda. Now on Sunday evening, the country's electoral officials said that De la Espriella had 43.7% of the votes, while Cepeda had 41%, with nearly all of the votes counted. Now, neither of them are on track to gaining their 50% plus votes, which is needed in order to secure the presidential post, making it likely that there's going to be an outcome decided in the runoff round, which has now been moved to the 21st of June. Now, the outgoing president, Gustavo Petro, said that he did not expect the tally, which has put his favourite, which is he is backing Cepeda, in second place. Now, Petro pledged to wait for the final result, which will be reviewed by judges. Now, what do these candidates stand for? Now, the frontrunner, Abelardo de la Espriella, has often portrayed himself as a tough crime fighter who has also spoken about his support for the US President Donald Trump, while Ivan Cepeda, a left-leaning senator, has promised to expand social reforms as well as a number of different things in relation to that. Now, the incumbent President Gustavo has put his support behind Cepeda, and now the candidates have been campaigning in the run-up to the voting, and promises to tackle armed drug-running guerrilla groups, as well as reduce inequality and poverty and improve the country's healthcare system. But we do know that these two will have another runoff in late June, and we'll see exactly who comes out on this. But it has been a very tight race, something that the incumbent president is not very happy about, and believes that there needs to be more scrutiny over the voting counting system. Now let's move over to our next headline, and that's actually on the CNN website, how Laos cave survivors found the courage to rescue themselves. Now, this story has been floating about all of last week, especially when some of those exploring the cave was able to make it out safely. Now, Mi Singfa Malay is a 23-year-old who actually spoke to CNN after he was able to leave the cave about his treacherous ordeal he and his friends had to endure, and decided to try their luck. Now, the reason why many of them went through this cave, because there was a hope of earning some money. The men, all local villagers, entered the narrow tunnels on the 20th of May in search for gold, but flash flooding stopped them from leaving, and they had to huddle together in damp darkness for at least 11 days, clinging to hope as a wall of water blocked their way out. If we keep scrolling, there's more pictures coming up. This is the men here actually now being able to see and meet their family and escape this ordeal as well. Now, the rescuers had first reached the group of 5 on Wednesday last week, an entire week after they had actually entered the cave and became trapped because of heavy flooding. Now, exhausted and surviving only on water, they slept as much as they could, and they prayed that there would be some form of salvation. Now, a massive rescue effort had begun to save the men trapped in the cave. None of the villagers had prior diving experience previously before, and were faced with a very real reality of how to get out through the subterranean labyrinth. Now, 2 villagers are believed to have entered the cave system before the 5 were rescued, and some of these men are still missing, and their families are holding a vigil at the rescue base in hope that they will find their missing loved ones. When asked whether or not they would venture again into the cave, the 23-year-old said never again. I think he definitely realised that was a very close call and has a second chance in life. That's him. There we are, waving now that he is now home with his family. But it was just based on finding some form of money and gold that they were told that this cave could provide. However, those villagers did not realize that the cave would be flooded, and that would actually prohibit them from actually leaving safely. Okay, now let's move over to our next headline this morning, and that's on the Guardian website. That's in relation to what's going on with Lebanon. Now, European leaders condemn Israel's deepening incursion into Lebanon. European leaders have condemned Israel's expanding incursion after its military captured the medieval Beaufort Castle. Israel's Prime Minister, this castle here, if you scroll down a little bit more, you'll be able to see exactly what this castle looks like that Israel has now taken over. They did this on Sunday, and now there's been international condemnation into that. Now, Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has vowed to push even deeper into the country. Now, France's President Emmanuel Macron has called for an end to the fighting, saying that nothing justifies the major escalation underway in South Lebanon. And the country's foreign minister has requested a meeting of the UN Security Council for Monday to discuss this further. And foreign ministers of the UK and Germany have also joined France in condemning this Israeli new operation. Now, Israel says it's targeting Hezbollah, which has a strong political presence in southern Lebanon. And just as a reminder, the current conflict began in March after Hezbollah fired rockets towards Israel in retaliation over the US-Israeli killing of Iran's supreme leader. Now, we have more information on this story in our report, so let's head over to that.
European leaders are voicing concern over Israel's latest military escalation in southern Lebanon, following the capture of new strategic positions and an expansion of ground operations against Hezbollah. The UK, France and Germany have criticized the move, while France has requested a United Nations Security Council meeting to discuss the situation. Lebanon's Prime Minister Nawaf Salam accused Israel of carrying out a scorched earth policy and imposing collective punishment on civilians in the south. The Israeli military has issued new evacuation warnings covering a large area south of the Zerani River. The IDF says it is targeting Hezbollah infrastructure in Tyre and other locations, and warned that anyone near Hezbollah positions could be at risk. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said troops have crossed beyond the Litani River and secured key positions.
I instructed the IDF to expand the maneuver in Lebanon. Our forces crossed the Litani River. They seized controlled areas. They occupied the Beaufort Ridge. And now my instruction is to deepen and expand our grip on the places that were under Hezbollah's control.
Defense Minister Israel Katz said Israeli forces will remain at the site as part of what Israel calls a security zone in southern Lebanon. The capture of Beaufort marks the first time Israeli forces have held the site since their withdrawal from southern Lebanon in 2000. Israel says the operation is aimed at protecting communities in northern Israel from future attacks. Hezbollah has not yet commented on the latest advances. Meanwhile, Lebanon's health ministry says at least 3,371 people have been killed and more than 10,000 injured since March 2nd as the conflict continues to intensify.
Now staying on this particular story, the top story for the day, I'm now joined by a political analyst, Nir Boms, who'll be able to go a bit further into all that's taking place within Lebanon, southern Lebanon and Israel. Welcome to the programme this morning.
Good to be here.
My first question in relation to this and what our report just showed is what Israel has done has drawn, as we know now, global attention and condemnation from European countries. Do you think that this will change Israel's strategy on what it calls a fight against terror?
I doubt that this will change Israel's strategy, and I'll just want to remind you and the viewers that we have a ceasefire with Hezbollah, at least tacitly on paper, following the last round of confrontation from November of 2024. Within the context of ceasefire, we've had 13 soldiers killed, and a civilian and bombing, which is non-stop just in the past few weeks. And the ongoing violation of the ceasefire necessitates action. We've had a number of agreements. We have the United Nations Resolution 1701, Hezbollah is not supposed to operate south of Litani. Of course, what we've seen in the recent Lebanon campaign, and when some of our forces ended up in the other side of the border, is that not only they were operating south of Litani, they were preparing tunnels and a ground operation that was similar to October 7th. I think Israel and Lebanon, which actually now engage in significant negotiations, have very little disputes. There are no significant border disputes, and there are no significant disputes over the potential relationship between the two countries. There is one major issue that is in disputes, which is Hezbollah. Lebanon, in many ways, I think, understand that it needs to make a choice. It needs to choose between Hezbollah and Lebanon. And if the choice will be Lebanon, I think with the help of Europeans and many others, I think we can build a very encouraging future here in the region and between the two countries.
Well, yeah, just on that, just because it's looking as the ceasefire is so fragile here, the fighting has continued. It hasn't really stopped. And the criticism towards that is that there's been more deaths since it was first brokered in April. We're now in June, the first day in June, and the fighting has continued. Israel has captured more ground in relation to the Castle Beaufort in southern Lebanon. What does this tell us about the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah? You mentioned that Lebanon needs to choose what it wants to do going forward, especially in relation to this, whether or not it's going to stay with Hezbollah or move over and decide to take a side with Israel. What does this current situation tell us, and how fragile is that ceasefire? Is it actually worth ongoing negotiations to put more things in place to stop the fighting?
I think what this ceasefire tells us, and what the previous ceasefire tells us, because I mentioned the agreement from 2024, and then the agreement in April, and then the agreement in June, it tells us that we can reach an agreement with Lebanon, but we cannot reach an agreement with Hezbollah, because Hezbollah is not subservient to Lebanon, because Hezbollah is not able to adhere to any resolution that may come to terms when it comes to Lebanon, even if some of his patrons or the Americans or the Europeans are trying to intervene here. Hezbollah operates independently of Lebanon, and what Hezbollah is doing now is making sure that there's going to be tensions and conflict, so that an agreement and negotiations could not take place. I would remind you that Hamas have used a similar strategy on October 7 to sabotage additional regional agreements and potential progress when it comes to additional peace resolutions or normalizations between Israel and its neighbors. It's sad, and I think what we need to convey to the Europeans and to anyone else is that we need all the pressure and all the help we can get in order to help Lebanon do what it needs to do and become Lebanon again. Lebanon is stuck in a situation when there is a militia that is stronger than the Lebanese military. When you have a terrorist organization that is not subservient to the central government of Lebanon, and when the government of Lebanon cannot control it. And until we're not able to sort this problem, we're not going to be able to create a different reality.
Yeah. Well, actually, you mentioned Hamas right there in regards to your speech in relation to the two being very similar between Hezbollah and Hamas. I just want to leave that to one side in this particular conversation and focus now on the US and Iran, because we know that Hezbollah is backed by Iran, and they are going through their own thing, especially when it comes to a ceasefire within Iran and the US. And I want to find out, if a deal was to be struck between the US and Iran over the Strait of Hormuz, over the uranium as well program there, will Israel also concede fighting efforts? Because we know that Iran has said that in order for a peace deal to take place, they also want the fighting to stop in Lebanon. Will Israel also decide that it would back off and make sure that that is also adhered to?
Well, granted, there are very good relations between Israel and the United States, and there are certainly a coordination when it comes to the military conduct, and there's a little bit of back and forth regarding what can be done on the border of Lebanon. But Israel also has responsibility to its own people. Israel cannot tolerate a scenario where drones and rockets continue to appear across the Israeli border. I was just listening this morning to a mother of a 19-year-old who was killed by another drone less than a week ago, and we just had an announcement of another 20-year-old who was killed just today. Granted, irrespective of whatever negotiation that may happen, and irrespective of whatever Iran may demand, we need to find a solution for this. And I very much believe that if we want to find a solution for this, it's not about just stopping the drones and the rockets for a while in order to make sure that we are building the emergency procedures and the factories and the launchers in order to launch again in the next few months or the next couple of years. We need to find a way to sort this problem. And the way to sort this problem is to make Lebanon, Lebanon again. And that means that Lebanon will have a sovereign government that will be able to control the country, including the armed factions within it. And at this point, Hezbollah is not willing to be a part of this arrangement. And I very much hope that in any negotiations, will be able to put on the table this particular issue. It's not an easy thing, and the IDF will not going to be able to disarm Hezbollah on its own. I think this is going to be a Lebanese matter, and it's not going to be an easy Lebanese matter. But this is essential. If Hezbollah is going to stay there, what we're going to have is the continuation of these conversations. You will speak with me and with others again to try to understand why Israel is again maneuvering in the south part of Lebanon. Israel is doing this because Hezbollah is shooting again. And we've had this cycle, unfortunately, for many decades. If you want to stop this, you need to make sure that you stop the root cause of the problem. And in that sense, an agreement in Iran can potentially help lead to an agreement in Lebanon if these root causes are indeed addressed.
Yes, you mentioned there as well that obviously people have died, innocent people have died, both in Israel and a number in Lebanon. Let's not forget that the amount of people that have been displaced because of the continued fighting between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. And I just want to also focus in on what you're saying, that the IDF, you're saying that Israel needs help from Lebanon in order to stop the fighting with Hezbollah. Is that what you're saying in this regard as well?
I believe, and that's based on speaking with colleagues and also partners from Lebanon, that we have a number of partners in Lebanon that understand the situation and understand the common challenge we have. I think Israel and Lebanon have a common challenge. And that challenge is Hezbollah. Hezbollah, in that sense, is not a genuine Lebanese organization. It was created and it's funded by outside parties. If Lebanon wants to exist as a Lebanon, as a sovereign state, with its complex structure of sects and religious and ethnic groups, it needs to find a better balance. And if one group out of this kaleidoscope is willing to take control with arms and with terror on the expense of the others, it becomes a Lebanese problem. And in that sense, it's a common problem.
If that's the case,
we will be able to sort this out, we can make Lebanon the Paris of the Middle East as it was.
So just on that, very briefly, sorry, because I have to now come to an end because this conversation is really fruitful. Just on that, we know that there are upcoming elections, that Benjamin Netanyahu is also placing himself. There's been criticisms about how his government has tackled this, obviously with what's going on in Gaza, as well as what's going on in Lebanon. The goal to eliminate Hezbollah and for the fighting to stop, that will play into Netanyahu's goal and also political career in a positive way. Do you think that that's also one of his strategies in order to keep the fighting continuing, rather, even if there is some form of peace deal in Iran between the US and Iran? Does Netanyahu also want this as a driver for his political career?
Look, maybe I have my own reservations on some of what this government or the prime minister is doing, but the objective remains probably similar to any government. We need to address this question of Hezbollah. It could be that there is a way to use only kinetics and military force, which is so far a lot of what we're seeing happening. And there may be a way to use the negotiation channel and try to give Lebanon a chance to address this as well. I believe that we need to use more of the second as well. We are having, as we speak this week, another round of conversations, of negotiations in Washington with Israelis and Lebanese. I, for one, believe that we need to give this channel a chance and that we need to work with Lebanon and with the moderate factions in Lebanon in order to think about how to address a problem which is shared, which is common, which is a danger for both countries. If we'll be able to do that, I think that there are more tools to use aside from military and kinetics, but eventually Hezbollah is not going to voluntarily just disappear from the scene. It may require some additional pounding and response in kinetic means, but it also requires a Lebanese move to really find a way to push this. Maybe Lebanon will need to build another type of armed force that will be dedicated to this issue if the Lebanese army is not able to do it. Maybe there are other ways to do it. Maybe the Iran negotiations can play a part in it. But certainly Israel and Lebanon needs to work together. I think we have shared interests. I think we have a shared goal to make a better Middle East, more prosperous Middle East, and a Middle East that is divorced of terrorism.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your insights, Mr. Boom. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bombs.
You're welcome.
A 1st of June deadline is looming for US President Donald Trump to respond to the BBC's motion to dismiss his multi-billion-dollar lawsuit. The broadcaster has rejected Trump's demands for compensation over edits made to his speech in a documentary. Let's take a look at this.
US President Donald Trump faces a June 1st deadline to respond to the BBC's motion to dismiss his $10 billion lawsuit over edits made to a speech featured in a documentary. The lawsuit, filed in Florida, accuses the BBC of intentionally and deceptively altering a speech Trump delivered on January 6, 2021, ahead of the US Capitol riots. Trump alleges that the broadcaster spliced together parts of his speech to make it appear that he had directed supporters to storm the Capitol later that day.
In a little while, you'll be seeing I'm suing the BBC for putting words in my mouth, literally. They put words in my mouth. They had me saying things that I never said coming out. I guess they used AI or something.
The BBC's lawyers have argued that the Panorama documentary, called Trump: A Second Chance, was not published in the United States and therefore falls outside the court's jurisdiction. The documentary's fallout, including allegations of bias, led to the resignations of the BBC's top executive and its head of news in November last year.
It seems, in the context of the resignation of the Director General and the head of news at the BBC, that it is not disputed that there was some editing carried out whereby either two different parts of one speech or two speeches were put together in a way which did not reflect exactly the speech that President Trump had actually made. However, I guess a question might be whether that was simply a bit of editing which didn't affect the sense of what he had said, or whether it was a distortion.
The BBC has previously apologised for the way the speech was edited, but maintains there are no grounds for a defamation claim and has rejected Trump's demands for compensation. The broadcaster has also argued that Trump's re-election undermines any claim of reputational damage. Under the current schedule, the BBC will have until June 15th to respond after Trump files his reply.
The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency has warned that attacks on nuclear facilities are unacceptable and must stop, citing the very real risk of nuclear accident. Director General Rafael Grossi made the appeal following a reported drone strike on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, describing it as a serious incident that put key nuclear safety principles at risk. IAEA experts inspecting the site found damage consistent with a drone impact on a turbine building. However, the agency said there was no immediate radiological danger. The battle for Colombia's presidency is intensifying after preliminary results put a right-wing outsider, Abelardo de la Espriella, ahead, prompting President Gustavo Petro to challenge the vote count and demand judicial scrutiny. Here's more.
Right-wing outsider Abelardo de la Espriella has emerged as the frontrunner in Colombia's presidential election and is set to face left-wing Senator Ivan Cepeda in a second-round vote later this month. De la Espriella celebrated the result with supporters in Barranquilla, where he launched a fierce attack on both President Gustavo Petro and his political ally Ivan Cepeda.
You, Mr. Gustavo Petro, and you, Mr. Ivan Cepeda, are a couple of criminals whom we will send into retirement forever. Petro is a criminal and has said he doesn't recognize the results, which have been decisive. A call to the security forces, to the army of the homeland, to activate the constitutional mechanism in the event that this criminal, drug-addicted and miserable man tries to ignore the will of the Colombian people.
The result, however, has quickly become the subject of controversy. President Petro says he does not accept the preliminary count, arguing that only the final results certified by judicial scrutiny commissions should be considered valid. In a post on social media, Petro questioned discrepancies in the electoral roll and raised concerns about changes made to the counting system. Cepeda has also urged caution, saying his campaign will wait for the official review process before recognizing the outcome.
The President of the Republic has just spoken clearly about one of those situations. There is a discrepancy that we want to verify regarding the electoral roll, and that is not just any discrepancy. We are talking about 885,000 people, or IED numbers.
Despite the dispute, preliminary results placed De la Espriella in first place with more than 43% of the vote, ahead of Cepeda on just under 41%. The two candidates are now expected to face off in a highly polarized runoff campaign, with security, governance and the future direction of the country likely to dominate the contest.
You're watching Daybreak. Now we're heading to a short break. When I return, we'll have some more information on our tech segment, Switch. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani. Now let's head over to the world of tech, and a startup in the UK finds a way to use human waste to grow wheat. Contact lenses of the future, plus a high-profile Italian car maker upsets its petrol-loving fans. Here's more with A News' Nathan Kamanga with more on Switch.
What if I told you that you have one resource that could help plants grow, and it's literally sitting in your pants? We all know how useful fertilizer is for crops, but did you know it can be made from urine? Now, that's exactly what a British startup called NPK Recovery says its P-Cycle technology can do. The company has developed a system that collects urine from toilets at public events and feeds it to bacteria. The microorganisms then take in the nutrients from the urine and convert it into a form that can be absorbed by plants. But does it actually work? Apparently, yes. The company says it has successfully grown wheat using fertilizer made from recycled urine, which is a major development because traditional fertilizers rely on finite resources like natural gas and mined minerals. So the next time you think about holding it in until you get home, just remember, somewhere out there, a plant might really need your help. Now, if you think your smart glasses are the coolest thing around, here's something way cooler. How about smart contact lenses? Developed by a Dubai-based company called Expansio, the lenses are designed to let users view apps and digital content directly through their eyes, almost like floating information layered onto the real world. The lenses would be controlled through eye movements, voice commands, and gestures, with the company even hinting at possible mind-controlled interactions in the future. Imagine driving and being able to see your speed without taking your eyes off the road. Or buying a coffee and, I don't know, confirming the payment by blinking twice. So if you're interested in purchasing a pair, you would have to wait a few more years, as Expansio says a version could be ready by 2030 and cost around $2,000 per year. Great! So now we can all watch movies while sitting through those long, unnecessary meetings. Now, when you hear the name Ferrari, you probably think of cars that are slick, fast, and loud. So you might be left confused after seeing this driving around. It's called the Luce, and it's Ferrari's first ever fully electric vehicle. Designed in partnership with former Apple design chief Johnny Ive, the $640,000 car has a range of over 500 kilometers and delivers up to 1,040 horsepower. So at least it's still fast. But the launch has been brutal, to say the least. Besides the company's stock price falling over 7%, fans have been outraged that the Italian brand abandoned its aggressive style. These are just some of the comments under the official launch video. Comments saying Homer Simpson designed the car, or that it's a Toyota Prius underneath a Ferrari badge. Even the Pope couldn't save it from the terrible comments. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to catch up with us for more tech news and insights on the next show.
Very interesting there. Even the recycled urine is a bit strange, but hey, if it makes that it can grow wheat, why not? Anyway, those are all your headlines for this morning, plus those interesting stories. Make sure you stay tuned to A News for further updates throughout the day, and I'll be back on your screens tomorrow morning. So make sure you join me there for 9 o'clock with Daybreak. Take care.